Partition of India in 1947 was a momentous event that reshaped the political landscape of South Asia. It resulted in the division of British India into two independent dominions, India and Pakistan, marking the end of nearly 200 years of British colonial rule. This event is remembered for the large-scale violence, mass migrations, and profound social upheaval it caused. The partition has had lasting consequences, not only on the immediate regions involved, but also on global geopolitics. This essay explores the historical context, the key players, the process leading to partition, the consequences, and the enduring legacy of the division. To understand the partition, it is essential to examine the historical context of British rule in India and the rise of communal identities. The British East India Company began its foothold in India in the 18th century, and by 1858, after the Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British Crown assumed direct control, marking the beginning of the British Raj. Under British rule, India was administered as a unified political entity, but it was also a highly diverse and complex society, with a multitude of languages, cultures, and religions. Religious identity, particularly the division between Hindus and Muslims, began to play an increasingly prominent role in Indian society during British rule. This was partly due to British policies that emphasized religious differences as part of their divide and rule strategy. The census, first conducted in 1871, categorized people by religion, and over time, this classification contributed to the crystallization of communal identities. Furthermore, the British practice of separate electorates, introduced in 1909, allowed Muslims to elect their representatives separately from Hindus, further entrenching communal divisions. The Indian National Congress, Inc., founded in 1885, emerged as the primary political organization advocating for Indian self-rule. While the Congress initially sought greater participation in governance, by the early 20th century, it began demanding full independence from British rule. The Inc. was predominantly led by Hindu leaders, though it had significant Muslim representation as well. However, the Inc.'s vision of a unified India was increasingly challenged by the All India Muslim League, founded in 1906. The League, under the leadership of figures like Aga Khan and later Muhammad Ali Jinnah, argued that Muslims constituted a separate nation with distinct cultural and religious needs that could not be adequately safeguarded in a Hindu-majority India. This perspective gained traction among many Muslims, especially in provinces where they were a minority. The idea of a separate Muslim state began to gain prominence in the 1930s. The 1937 provincial elections, in which the Congress won a majority of seats but failed to form governments in Muslim-majority provinces, deepened the Muslim League's fears of Hindu domination. Jinnah, who had initially been a proponent of Hindu-Muslim unity, became increasingly convinced that Muslims needed their own state to protect their interests. The Lahore Resolution, passed by the Muslim League in 1940, formally articulated the demand for independent states in the northwestern and eastern zones of India, where Muslims were in the majority. This resolution laid the groundwork for the creation of Pakistan. The concept of Pakistan, which means land of the pure, in Urdu, was championed by Jinnah and was based on the two-nation theory, the idea that Hindus and Muslims were distinct nations with their own customs, religion, and traditions, and that these differences necessitated the creation of separate states. The demand for Pakistan was not universally accepted among Muslims. Many Muslim leaders, including those in the Inc., opposed the idea of partition, fearing it would lead to violence and disrupt the lives of millions. Similarly, the Congress leadership, particularly Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, opposed the partition, advocating instead for a united India where all communities could coexist. The British, weakened by World War II and facing growing pressure from the Indian independence movement, realized that maintaining control over India was becoming increasingly untenable. The Labour government in Britain, led by Prime Minister Clement Attlee, was determined to grant India independence, but faced the challenge of how to do so without triggering widespread violence. In 1946, the British government sent a cabinet mission to India to negotiate the terms of independence. The mission proposed a united India with a federal structure, giving significant autonomy to provinces while retaining a central government for defense, foreign affairs, and communications. The plan also proposed grouping provinces into sections based on religion, with the possibility of secession after 10 years. While the Congress initially accepted the plan, it later rejected it, fearing it would weaken the central government. The Muslim League, after some initial reservations, endorsed the plan but withdrew its support after the Congress's rejection. The failure of the cabinet mission plan led to widespread communal violence, particularly in Bengal and Punjab, where tensions between Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs were already high. The violence highlighted the deep divisions within Indian society and made the prospect of a peaceful transition to independence increasingly unlikely. In February 1947, Lord Louis Mountbatten was appointed as the last Viceroy of India with a mandate to oversee the transition to independence. Mountbatten quickly concluded that partition was the only viable solution to the communal conflict. On June 3, 1947, the British government announced the Mountbatten Plan, which proposed the division of British India into two independent dominions, India and Pakistan. The plan was accepted by both the INC and the Muslim League. One of the most contentious aspects of the partition was the drawing of the boundary between India and Pakistan. Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a British lawyer with no prior experience in India, was appointed to head the boundary commissions for Punjab and Bengal. Radcliffe had just 5 weeks to draw the borders, and he had little knowledge of the complex demographic, cultural, and economic factors involved. The Radcliffe Line, named after Radcliffe, was intended to divide the provinces of Punjab and Bengal along religious lines, with Muslim-majority areas going to Pakistan and Hindu-majority areas remaining in India. However, the line was drawn hastily and with limited consultation, leading to widespread confusion and resentment. Many communities found themselves on the wrong side of the border, leading to one of the largest and most tragic mass migrations in history. The partition was formally implemented on August 14 and 15, 1947, with Pakistan gaining independence on the former date and India on the latter. However, the announcement of the Radcliffe Line was delayed until August 17, 2 days after independence, leaving millions uncertain about their future. The partition triggered an unprecedented human tragedy. It is estimated that between 10 and 15 million people were displaced as they fled across the newly drawn borders. Hindus and Sikhs moved from Pakistan to India, while Muslims migrated from India to Pakistan. The migration was often accompanied by horrific violence, as communal tensions erupted into massacres, rapes, and abductions. Entire villages were wiped out, trains carrying refugees were attacked, and the landscape of Punjab and Bengal was scarred by the brutality of partition. Estimates of the number of people killed during the partition vary widely, with figures ranging from 200,000 to over 1 million. The violence was particularly intense in Punjab, where the proximity of the new borders and the mixed population made it a flashpoint for communal conflict. Women were especially vulnerable, with thousands being abducted, raped, or forced into marriage by members of the opposing community. The trauma of partition left deep scars on the collective memory of the subcontinent and continues to shape the region's politics and society. The partition resulted in the creation of two new states, the Republic of India and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Pakistan was initially composed of two geographically and culturally distinct regions, West Pakistan and East Pakistan, separated by over 1,000 miles of Indian territory. The two regions had little in common beyond their Muslim-majority populations, and tensions between them would eventually lead to the secession of East Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh in 1971. Pakistan's first Governor-General, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, envisioned the country as a homeland for Muslims where they could freely practice their religion and preserve their cultural identity. However, Jinnah also emphasized that Pakistan should be a secular state where all citizens, regardless of religion, would have equal rights. This vision was reflected in his famous speech on August 11, 1947, where he declared that you are free, you are free, you are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosques or to any other place of worship in this state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion, caste, or creed that has nothing to do with the business of the state. Despite Jinnah's vision, Pakistan's early years were marked by political instability, economic challenges, and the dominance of the military in politics. The question of the role of Islam in the state became a contentious issue, with different factions advocating for varying degrees of religious influence in governance. In contrast, India adopted a secular constitution that guaranteed equal rights to all citizens, regardless of religion. Under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, India embarked on a path of economic and social development, emphasizing industrialization, education, and social reform. However, the scars of partition and the communal violence that accompanied it continued to influence Indian politics. The assassination of Mahatma Gandhi by a Hindu nationalist in January 1948 was a stark reminder of the deep divisions within Indian society. One of the most significant and enduring consequences of partition was the conflict over the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. At the time of partition, princely states were given the option to join either India or Pakistan, or to remain independent. The Maharaja of Kashmir, Hari Singh, initially chose to remain independent, but later acceded to India in October 1947 after an invasion by tribal forces from Pakistan. Kashmir's accession to India led to the First Indo-Pakistani War, which ended in 1948 with a ceasefire brokered by the United Nations. The ceasefire line, known as the Line of Control, effectively divided Kashmir between India and Pakistan. However, the conflict over Kashmir remains unresolved, and the region has been a flashpoint for several wars and ongoing military skirmishes between the two countries. The Kashmir conflict has also fueled religious and nationalist sentiments in both India and Pakistan. In India, Kashmir's status as a Muslim-majority state in a secular, Hindu-majority nation has been a source of tension. In Pakistan, the issue of Kashmir is closely tied to its identity as a Muslim state and its rivalry with India. The partition of India and Pakistan has had a profound and lasting impact on the subcontinent and beyond. The immediate human cost, in terms of lives lost and communities displaced, was staggering. The violence and trauma of partition left deep scars that continue to influence the politics, society, and culture of the region. In India, partition led to the establishment of a secular democracy that has, for the most part, maintained a commitment to pluralism and diversity. However, communal tensions continue to surface, often exacerbated by political rhetoric and social divisions. The rise of Hindu nationalism in recent decades has challenged the secular foundations of the Indian state, leading to renewed debates over the country's identity and the rights of religious minorities. In Pakistan, the legacy of partition is reflected in its ongoing struggles with political instability, religious extremism, and the role of the military in governance. The question of the role of Islam in the state remains a contentious issue, with different factions advocating for varying degrees of religious influence in governance. The secession of East Pakistan in 1971, resulting in the creation of Bangladesh, was a major blow to the idea of a unified Muslim state and highlighted the deep linguistic, cultural, and economic divisions within Pakistan. The partition also had a significant impact on global geopolitics. The rivalry between India and Pakistan, both nuclear-armed states, has been a source of concern for the international community. The unresolved Kashmir conflict, in particular, has the potential to trigger a major military confrontation with potentially catastrophic consequences. The partition of India in 1947 was a watershed moment in the history of the Indian subcontinent. It marked the end of British colonial rule and the beginning of a new era of independence for India and Pakistan. However, the partition also resulted in one of the largest mass migrations in history, accompanied by widespread violence and suffering. The legacy of partition continues to shape the politics, society, and culture of the region, with the scars of 1947 still evident in the ongoing conflicts and tensions between India and Pakistan. The partition serves as a reminder of the deep divisions that can arise from the politics of identity and the challenges of nation building in a diverse and complex society.